טוב, אני חושבת שאנחנו יכולים להתחיל. אני אתן לאנשים להיכנס במהלך השיחה. Welcome everyone, we want to start. So I'm going to let Eyal to introduce himself, to represent himself to you. What we're asking is that if you have a question, please write your question in the chat and we will get back to your questions once Eyal finish the talk. That's it. Thank you everyone for joining, and Eyal, the floor is yours.
So good evening everybody. Can you hear me? Just raise your hand if you can hear me. Great, and everybody can see the presentation. Good evening, Abud. How are you? So with your permission, I will start with this. Hope that everybody can see it. And it is written here, Shukran Israel al musa'ada wal hub. In English, it means thank you, Israel, for the help and for the love. Let's see it again. It's a picture, it's something that a Syrian boy drew to us, the Israeli soldiers, while he was thanking us. And this is the story of the Good Neighbor campaign. So good evening, everybody. My name is Eyal Dror. I'm a former lieutenant colonel in the IDF. I served my country 24 years, 19 years in the coordination units with the Palestinian. There I met Gal, which is hosting us today. She was one of my soldiers, one of my best soldiers, and I'm so excited to meet her here with the Zoom. It was, I think, 2011, so something about 10 years, 9 to 10 years ago. And one of the reasons that I let you see this Arabic sign, first of all, I'm very proud of it, but the second is for you to excuse me for my English. You should understand that Arabic was my second language most of my days. English is a third, so I'm a little bit apologize for mistakes that might happen. As mentioned, I'm a Lieutenant Colonel Reserve. I finished my duty 6 months ago. Today I'm still serving as a reserve officer in the Bashan division. This is the division that protects the Israeli-Syrian border. I'm married, I have 3 wonderful children. Now they are going to sleep. And I'm very excited to be here with you in this special day. I'm sure that most of you familiar, all of you familiar with this in Israel. It's the day before the Pesach. In your hometown, it's still noon. We are after a very long day that I work for my wife, cleaning, cooking, And tomorrow, for the first time in the history, I think we are going to celebrate the Pesach all by ourselves. Fortunate that we have this Zoom, so we will be able to make some family's party. Hope that you are okay. Thank you everybody for joining me. I will try in the next 20 minutes, 25 minutes, to speak a little bit about this project, to try to explain you the reasons that happened, why we did it as Israel, as the Israeli Defense Forces, and then we have all night long, all day long for your question. It's a very special webinar because we have at least one guest, one special guest. I saw, I think that the second one, so Yara is also here. Great. So we have two. For me, it's amazing because we have two special guests that I'm very excited that they are with us. First is Mr. Aboud, who join us, a Syrian guy who is lived today in Toronto, a Syrian refugee. I think that if some of us would have thought 5 years ago that there is a possibility that we will speak and a Syrian refugee will join us and will be very excited to join us, well, personally, I didn't believe it might happen. So thank you, Aboud, for joining us. I just will say to you that Aboud is one of the most pro-Israeli fighters that I ever known. When people attacking me on social media, is the first to answer. And the second guest is Yara, which is almost an Israeli name. She's living in Dubai, a Muslim woman, born in Dubai, living in an Arabic country. Also appreciate the state of Israel. Again, I think that this is something that make me personally very, very happy that we can speak. And you will hear from my story that when Jewish, Christian, and Muslim people, doesn't mean where they born or what they believe in, join together, good things happening. So with your permission, I will immediately start. And for the people who don't know a lot about this area, I will ask you to take a look at about this picture. You can see the state of Israel, which is a small country, of course, with our neighbors, Arabic countries from Egypt and Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Turkey. This is, let's say, the Middle East, the closest countries that around us. And if we want to speak a little bit about where is the Golan Heights, the area that we operated in, take a look, please, about this area on the blue spot. This is the area of the Golan Heights. This is the Israeli-Syrian border, 100 kilometers of border. And our story began in 2011, while something happened in the Arabic world. It wasn't connected to Israel. You know, there is some rumors in the Arabic countries that Israel is tend to be blamed in all the worst thing that happening in the world. During this day, I heard a lot of people speaking that the corona is something that Israel spread the word. Okay, I'm just laughing about this. But in 2011, something happened in the Arabic world. And I think that most of you are familiar with the name of the Arab Spring. It arrived quickly to Syria. Unfortunately for them, very quickly, they entered to a bloody civil war that's still happening in Syria in those days. A tragic war that I think that the numbers of people that lost their lives is almost 1 million and 6 million refugees. It's a totally disaster for a country that most of the country has been destroyed from this war. And what happened in the Israeli-Syrian border, which was 40 years a very quiet border, is, and please take a look at that picture. You can see here the border, and to understand that the black spot represents the ISIS. It means that we find ISIS. I remind you, those people that when they are slaughtering other people, they swear to destroy the Jewish people, the Israeli state. So they were located at this spot. Here is Israelis' settlements, Israelis' villages. Can you imagine the meaning of an Israeli woman, wife, opening her window, understanding that less than a mile, ISIS is watching? And the red area still was controlled by the Syrian regime with the assistance, of course, I think that you might recognize those two flags, the Iranian regime and Hezbollah. And even in the green spot, which we operated in, or which we helped people here, it was also with groups of Al-Qaeda and other radicals, Islamic group. But I think that what influenced the state of Israel the most is this. And the green area, which was controlled not by the regime, there were living approximately 250,000 human beings. Now, I'm speaking about human beings. I'm not speaking about Syrian. I'm not speaking about Muslim. They are human beings, and they were living in tents. And they didn't have hospitals, or you can see an example for an emergency room. This is an emergency room, which is doctor, his manager is a dentist, and a doctor that can operate you is a student that learned 2 years in university. This was the reality, and this is still the reality of the Syrian people who were living next to the Israeli-Syrian border. They lost almost everything. Their medical facilities has been bombed, their schools have been bombed, their infrastructure has been bombed. They didn't have water, they didn't have electricity. And the state of Israel understood that there are people suffering less than a mile from our border. And we find an opportunity to let them become familiar with Israelis. If you will think about it, Syrians are the only Arab country that didn't have any relationship with the state of Israel. Egypt and Jordan, we have a peace agreement. Lebanon, well, we were there for 30 years. The Palestinians, of course, Syrian are not familiar with the state of Israel, and they were educated to hate us. Why? This was the regime propaganda. And we understood that by helping them, we can achieve a huge achievement. First of all, helping miserable people. Second, let them become familiar with the state of Israel. And in February 2013, it was the first time that Israel decided to evacuate Syrian wounded people from Syria into Israel. From that time, in 6 years, we took 4,500 wounded people. Now, they weren't warriors. We have been blamed. We have been accused that they are warriors. We have been accused that they are ISIS. Take a look about this young boy here. He was reached the border fence after his home has been targeted by the regime, and he was almost burned to death. His condition was so severe that we had to call a helicopter and to take him to Tel Aviv hospital, because the hospitals in the north cannot handle with this situation. So during 6 years, 4,500 people, human beings, has been evacuated in the state of Israel. Most of them, I'm proud to say, most of them, we succeed to save their lives. And the operation became bigger. And in 2016, the IDF decided to establish a unit. We called it the Good Neighbor Campaign, the Good Neighbor Unit. I was privileged to establish this unit from zero, to build it step by step, to choose my soldiers, my officers, to think what we could do for the Syrian people. And my mission was very simple: to increase dramatically the humanitarian aid to the Syrian regime. And I will take you immediately to one night at the border fence. to describe you one of the operations. We called it a doctor's visit. Gal could explain you later on what does it mean doctor's visit in Israel when you are a commander in the IDF is, let's say, an IDF joke, but the operation wasn't a joke. The purpose of this operation, the doctor's visit, was to take care for 25 children suffering from chronic diseases and to take them to the Israeli hospital to meet with expert doctors. Now, take a look at this picture. It can describe you the tense of this operation. You are going the fence as a field commander, you are going the fence to meet children. I told you, 3 young children at my home. You can see your children in those eyes, but you are going to meet children with their mothers, but you don't know if this mother, for example, didn't got a strange phone call and forced, just before she crossed the state of Israel, to deliver a present to the Israeli soldiers. Now, if some of you have served in the army, doesn't matter in the American army or the IDF, you can understand that in our region, a present is not a nice one. It's from the kind that make a very big boom. And you don't know this because you don't know with who you are dealing. So you're going to help people to do a wonderful humanitarian job by risking your lives. Every night, and I can tell you that we operated 700 times. 700 times, we chose to risk our own lives, my soldiers' lives, because we didn't know if this woman will bomb or if a sniper will shoot. But let's speak about optimistic things because nothing, fortunately, happened. We brought them to the Israeli doctors. 1,400 Syrian children reached the state of Israel, got treated by the Israeli doctors. Now, if I can share with you 2 minutes about Syrian children, and I think that everybody that will listen will be agreed that it was a unique mission because it's not a normal thing to meet a boy that didn't get a shower for 2 months. It's not a normal thing to look at the eyes of a young boy and to see that he doesn't have any hope. To speak with the boy and ask him, when you will be adult, what do you want to do? And to hear the terrible answer, I will not be an adult. Probably I will die in a year or 2. Or to meet a beautiful girl like this girl that will tell you that she ran away from her home 12 times in the last 6 years because of this war. This was the Syrian children that we met. And this is why, after hearing them, we got the power to do and to continue to do this special operation, even when it was very cold, even when it was raining, even when it was snowing. Because when we got this picture, it was worth it. It was worth every night that we risk our lives. To see Syrian children or to see children smiling, enjoying the moment, for us it was amazing. We were so proud in those 1,400 children that reached the border fence, and it gave us the opportunity to continue the operation because the trust has been built. Trust between us, the Israelis, who were perceived as their bitter enemies of the Syrian people, and we become like friends. It's not an unacceptable word. So we become like friends with them, and they trust us. And when they trust us, they ask from us for some more. They ask for some more help. So we had the opportunity to bring them fuel and food and medicines and to establish an hospital for expectant mothers. So the operation increased from day to day, from night to night, and until the last moment, until the regime came back to the border fence in 2018. And in our last operation, we had a unique privilege. I think some of you are familiar with the name of the White Helmets people. Are you familiar with them? Okay, some of you, I can see that waving yes, some of you know. So the White Helmets people were Syrian people, of course, which was trained in Jordan, and their mission was to save lives. Mission to save lives of the Syrian people who were bombed by their own regime. Now, they were the first to expose the world that the regime is using gas and using bombing civilian facilities. So in the last days when the regime attacked the area that was just near the Israeli-Syrian border, we got some requests from some leaders of the world that sponsored this operation of the White Helmets. And they asked our prime minister to evacuate those people. So you can see it on this picture. In the end of July 2018, more than 420 people has saved by the state of Israel by the Operation Good Neighbor. It was a huge operation. Of course, 10 hours, we could hear the bombing, we can hear the shooting, and 420 people came across to Israel, men, women, children, babies. We took them by buses and transported them to Jordan, and then there they got new lives, new identities. They are all living among us because some of them living in the States, some of them living in Canada, some of them living in Europe. I can assure that they will not forget the state of Israel. And just two last remarks. I told you that when Jewish, Christian, Muslims, when people joining together, good things happening. I want to give you one example. Well, I have my budget, but it wasn't enough. I knew that we cannot supply as much as we want if it will be only by the IDF or by the money of the state of Israel. So we find some colleagues, some NGOs, non-government organizations, Friendships Unlimited, they were Christian from the state, from Louisiana, and what they've built is this amazing field clinic in which doctors treated 8,000 Syrian people. Now, those people, those Syrian people, learned that the United States is an enemy. I don't know how many of you are familiar that in the Arabic world, in some Arabic leaders, Israel perceived as the small devil, United States is the big devil. Abud is laughing. I'm sure that he knows about what I'm speaking. But 8,000 Syrian people entered this place and met Christian people that crossed to the other side of the fence by the help of the IDF and treated the Syrian people. And I think that what was even more amazing is the opportunity for their children to play. Now, stop for a second. Try to figure out how many times in the history Jewish people, Christian people, and Muslim people worked together. I don't know. I can assure you that it was the first time in history that Jewish people, Christian people, and Muslim people worked together under the command of an IDF Israeli officer to save Muslims' life. I can promise you. And those children were playing. The mothers had the opportunity just to sit and not to be thinking, is today going to be our last days? Today we are going to die by bombing of the regime, by today we are going to be kidnapped, to be raped. This was their reality. And when they was in this facility, they were secured, fully secured. When they got home, we send with them even some presents, bags with food, with medicine, in order that they will be able to live a little bit better lives. And you can see, take a look at this picture, the smile, the hope. I think, and I always say that it was the fact that gave us the power to continue, to see people realize for some minutes that they are still living in a good world, that there is hope that one day the life will be better. Now, the operation came to an end. I told you before, the summer of 2018, the regime conquered the area, and which with this slide I would want to finish my conversation. People ask me, was it worth it? Was it worth to risk your life, not to be with your family, to risk your soldier life, to spend a lot of money for those Syrian people? For those people, I have just one word: yes. Yes, it was. You can take a look at the picture that I put here and try to take a look. I want to see if you can see it. This was the beginning of the picture. Okay? You can see, and I think that you can assume that who drew it is not a mature, because it was a girl, 9 years old girl from one of the villages. She was suffering from very hard diabetic, and when she reached the border fence and the Israeli doctors took her to the hospital, they informed me that 24 hours later she wouldn't have survived. She was in Israel for 6 months, and before she left, she asked me how the flag of Israel looks like, and I drew the flag of Israel, and she tried to copy it. You can see that the Star of David made her some difficulties, but in the end she succeeded. She succeeded. And I think that what is even more exciting is not just the flag of Israel, the word that is written here. Here you can see the word wiham. Now, a person that knows to read Arabic can understand that she wrote it with some grammar mistake. But when you are not going to school, you don't know even how to write your own name. And I think that this international sign everybody can be familiar with. But this word, what she wrote here is Abu Yaqub, the father of Jacob. But she wasn't a religious girl. Abu Yaqub was my Arabic name. So everybody who asked me, it was worth it? Yeah. Because Wiham will not forget Abu Yaqub, which was a representative of the state of Israel. Today, there is 250,000 people living in the other side of the fence that will not forget the state of Israel. Today, there are across the world a lot of Syrian people who are living now in some countries. One of them is Abudu, who is with us on this webinar, that will not forget the state of Israel, that learn a little bit more about the state of Israel. And I think that after saving thousands or hundreds of thousands of people's life, this was the achievement of this operation, to let Syrian people become familiar with the state of Israel, with the Israelis people, and I don't think that they will forget us. So with this, I will finish. I will say to you all, thank you very much. It was quick, but I didn't want to make you tired. I'm here, so if some of you want to ask question, please be my guest. I have all the time for you. Gal will guide this. Thank you for this part.
So thank you, Eyal. Can we ask Yara and Abu to
Abud,
introduce themselves, and maybe if they can talk for a few seconds and their thoughts?
Hi. Should I go? Oh. Please go ahead, Yara.
That's okay. أهلين عبود, كيفك? How are you? لا, both of us can talk. It's okay.
Please go ahead. It's okay.
Yes, Gal and Eyal, thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. And yes, I'm open to hearing any questions that you would like to know. Let me introduce myself first of all. My name is Yara. I'm half Syrian, half Filipina. I was born and raised in Dubai, and that's where I live. And I mean, throughout living in Dubai, I just went to one school, graduated from one school, went there for 13 years, and I was basically, I mean, the society, the education, it's all about, you know, it was, how to say, I don't like to say this, but that was the reality back then. Of course, now it's more progressive, okay? But back then, maybe let's say 7 years ago, there was a lot of indoctrination of hatred towards, we're supposed to hate Jews. That's the first thing that we learned while I was still in, you know, grade school, first grade, second grade, third grade. I never, although my mother is a Catholic Christian and my father is a Sunni Muslim. So I come from a very, how to say, I mean, I come from a lot of perspectives, religious-wise, nationality-wise, where I grew up, where I traveled. Yeah, so we were first taught in school, of course, not my family. I'll tell you a bit of my family soon. So yeah, in school we're taught to hate Jews during Islamic classes. And then, of course, when it comes to social studies, we learn that there's no such thing as Israel, and they're supposed to hate it. We see it in the news. Whenever someone wants to bully you in school, instead of calling you fat or ugly, they say, oh, you're a Yahudi. Yahudi means Jew, and it's an insult. Or oh, you're acting like an Israeli, you're the devil, or something like that. So that's what we grew up with, but it never made sense to me, even as a kid. And I know when I used to visit Damascus back in every summer during grade school, I would go to Damascus. I'm from Latakia, because my family is in the political field or journalism as well. So my family would, like, how to say, my grandfather from my father's side, he went to Cairo to study Arabic literacy, and to learn Arabic literacy you have to learn Semitic languages, and that included Hebrew. So he actually learned Hebrew to the core to understand Arabic, and that's when he started to teach my grandmother, and both of them decided to teach the Syrian Jewish community back in Damascus Hebrew. So that's how I was, like, when I go to back in Damascus when I was young, I would see the Hebrew worksheets. I would see my grandfather also wrote a book in Hebrew, and how to know a person is Syrian Jewish, and a lot of things. And then, yeah, so from that time, although, sorry to say, but my grandfather is anti-Israel, but he,
Yeah, right.
yes.
Sorry, with all due respect, maybe some other people would also like to talk. Sorry, just not to be impolite. Maybe
Sorry?
maybe you can give a chance for other people to talk as well.
Yes, I'm
Thank
open.
you. Appreciate it. But it's a very interesting story, really is. Thank you so much.
Yes, of course, I'm definitely open. You can unmute and then go ahead.
It's a very interesting story. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's just wonderful. I'm specifically interested in how your parents met, actually. It's, yeah. So my name is Aboud. I'm a former Syrian refugee. I'm now living in Toronto. Colonel Dror, this is an honor. This is a pleasure. I've been wanting to meet you for so long. The fact is that what Colonel Dror is too modest to say is that while he was in charge of Operation Good Neighbor, he couldn't say it publicly. He could only talk about it after he left active service and went into the reserves. In fact, for years, Israel kept it secret what they were doing, and it's just so wonderful. Like Camp Isha, I think it's Isha. I think so. I didn't even know about it. I had no idea about it before now. There's just so much, and I really look forward someday to somebody taking your story, putting it in book form, putting in a film form. I mean, we talk about Foda. Foda is a great TV series, but this is real life. This is real life. It's just, it's incredible. So thank you so much, Colonel. We really do, I mean, thank you so much. We really do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
would just, Gal, I would just add that, yes, I was a lot of time asked why Israel didn't publish this story. And hey, everybody is attacking Israel, and why didn't you publish it? You did such a wonderful thing. Go and get some points over the word. So the reason is this operation was confidential until July 2017. I didn't allow, although I got a lot of requests from my commanders and above my commanders to publish it. Also, the political level in Israel asked me to publish it, but we felt that if we publish it before the trust between us and the Syrian people will not be strong enough, it will destroy this operation. Because in my neighborhood, the Middle East, to be perceived as, and Abud and Yara will be familiar with the word, Amil Israeli. It means an Israeli collaborator. The meaning is you are not going to celebrate your next birthday. Sometimes you will not going to celebrate the next day. And we were afraid that they will accuse us that you took advantage about us to get some points. So we kept it secretly until we felt strong and until the Syrian people asked us to publish it, to be their voice through the word. So it was published a little bit, but yes, most of it wasn't published. Today, of course, we speak a little bit more about this because I personally think that it's something that people should hear. But it was a secret for the sake of the Syrian and because we wanted that this project will be succeeded. Gal, back to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Yala. Thank you, Abud. Thank you, Eyal. I want to be sensitive with time and I want to open the floor for questions from the students. So students, community members, feel free to unmute yourselves and ask the questions. Yeah. Who's going to be the first brave person?
Who's going to be the first brave?
I'll ask a question. Hi, first of all, thank you very much. It's just a supremely inspiring story on the mission, really. I don't think, like you said, nothing like it ever has happened before. I have a lot of questions, but I think my first question to you will be, I'm trying to choose. Was there any participation with other Arab countries on the border of Syria on this mission? I know it was an IDF operation, but we have relations with Jordan, and Jordan also shared a border with Syria. And so I wonder if there was any talk or any coordination between you and the Jordanians.
No, there is a coordination between Israel and Jordan, also military coordination, but it's not on this border. It's between the Israeli-Jordanian border. So no, it wasn't any coordination with Arab countries along us. Yeah, it was led by IDF, and the people that we coordinate was organizations from countries in the world, basically from the United States, but again, it was different kinds of organization.
Thank you, Neil.
I can ask something. I have a question for Yala. I'm wondering, so you said you kind of spent a lot of time between Damascus and Dubai, and that you are basically pro-Israel and you see Israel as a good force. And I'm wondering kind of, do you get any backlash from people around you? What do people around you think? I don't know if it's different in Damascus or Dubai, but...
Oh, I'm considered a traitor. But now I've always been, my Syrian side, I'm considered a traitor till this day. Even my grandparents are not very fond of this, although they taught me Hebrew and they taught me not to hate Jews or anything. But when it comes to my activism for the Syrian and Israeli relations. They're not happy about that, not because of anything, but for the safety of myself. And that's that. But being raised in Dubai, although there's a lot of countries that are there, but in the recent years, in the last 3 years, Dubai has been focused on increasing tolerance, and they wanna actually introduce, even without diplomatic relations, but with the expo that is going to be hosted soon, they wanna slowly let the people in Dubai and the Middle East region warm up to Israel. So they start that by the year of tolerance and letting us, they're starting to build a synagogue and starting to let Jews and Israelis even visit for sport events, design events, and all those conferences. So they're building up to it even without diplomatic relations. So in the eyes of the Dubai people, I'm progressive. But in the eyes of the Syrian people, majority of them, I'm a traitor. So yeah, I do get threats and everything, but I'm going for it. There's nothing gonna stop me. I believe in it so much. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Daniel, for your question.
Hi. Yara, when you said you were considered a progressive by the people from Dubai, but a traitor from people from Syria, is there any difference in terms of the age of the generations? Like, I will assume most people around, most millennials, people in their 20s and their 30s, are more open-minded about Israel, and they don't want to consider themselves that they inherited this war and they should just move forward. I will imagine older generations be more anti-Semite or denying the existence of Israel. Is that accurate?
No, because there are people my age who are not progressive and not accepting, and then there are people my age who are. So I actually, when I came out as a Syrian Zionist, that I am not Jewish, but I'm a Sunni, like a Muslim Christian, and I'm a Syrian Zionist, and I state out very precisely. Actually, a lot of Syrians, both from the millennial, Generation Y and Generation Z and the baby boomers, they actually, although they are closeted Zionists, they are not ready to come out yet that they are Zionists or they believe in the state of Israel or anything, or they warm up to Israelis, actually come and they're like, one day we hope that we are allowed to come out of the closet. So no, it doesn't depend on age, because I think it's about what the person's perspective and the upbringing that he came through. And of course, when people start to research a bit more about Israel, they start to find truth. Even people, my friends, when they're at first, they were anti-Israel. Slowly, they start to warm up to Israel and Israelis. So yes. Thank you, Nurji. Tada.
I have a question for Lieutenant Eyal. When you go on these missions and you obviously have to decide whether or not this person that you might be bringing back to across the Israeli border is, safe or not, or like, do they have anyone behind them with some sort of weapon? How do you decide whether or not to take them into an Israeli hospital, or say, no, this might be a dangerous situation for me and the rest of the team? How do you decide?
Every time we went down the fence, it was dangerous. Doesn't matter who we were going to meet. For the people who were next to the Israeli-Syrian border, some of you have visited Israel, the Golan Heights. You can see that the topography of this area is that when we are as soldiers going the fence, we are down because the fence is on a valley and the Syrian villages are a little bit higher up. In military language, it means a huge disadvantage for me and my forces. Now, every time we went there was a risk. So the very obvious thing was not to do so. So it wasn't a question if someone was risky. Every time it was a contact, every time that we sent some food there, it was a risky situation. And military life could be risky. So we did what we have to do to secure ourselves, but we didn't cancel any mission.
Thank you, Naomi.
No one has any other. If somebody else has a question, they should go. But I have another one. It's for Lieutenant Eyal again. Sorry, but you said you had to build the unit for this operation, and you had to choose who's going to be helping you. How do you do that? Like, how do you know how to choose who? I mean, obviously you need some people who speak Arabic, but I mean, like, what goes through the process?
Well, I had some luck with choosing my people. We knew that it's gonna be a doctor. We knew that it is gonna be a logistic officer. Just a feeling, I'm 24 years. I've been commanding or in a civil language a manager. From this is the only thing that I know to do, let's say, beside being a father. I think, I know how to be a manager. This is what I was being trained all of my life, to choose my people, to establish and to guide them and to lead them. Here it was very unique because there is not a lot of time that you can build something from the beginning. It was like a startup. I chose, it was some interviews, and I always said I chose the soldiers, for example, that I saw the light in their eyes, that I knew that they will do this. And it wasn't an easy thing because, hey, why we should help those Syrian people? They are our enemies. And to convince them that this is the right thing to do as IDF soldiers, as IDF commanders, it was in the beginning a little bit hard, but when they saw the Syrian, when they learned how they are living, everybody was into it. And I got also a lot of requests from other colleagues to join and participate this operation. So again, I had a lot of luck to choose the right people, but I think that whoever did this was very blessed.
I think I have a question. So we hear, thank you so much for all the information, but since Corona started, and Iran and USA, Israel and Iran, and again, Israel and Gaza, and so many other stories, we no longer hear in the media about what's going on today in Syria. So can you enlighten us? Do you have any updated information, especially in the light of Corona?
Yes. So first of all, let's say it like this. From the end of 2015, when the Russian army entered this arena, what is they are doing, that they are helping Bashar regime to reconquer again all parts of Syria. Until 2015, 70% of the Syrian land was conquered by those rebel organizations. Some of them were very extremist, Jabhat al-Nusra, which is Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and. Since the end of 2015, again, it was reconquered by the regime. Today, almost all parts of Syria has been conquered. There is still one region, Idlib, it is in the northern part of Syria, which the border with Turkey, which is still not reconquered by the regime. There is a lot of issues there with the Turkey government, with the Russian, with the Iranian. I will not enter for this. I can tell you that, for example, in the region that is next to the Israeli-Syrian border, although there is regime, the citizens are still suffering. Citizens living in poverty. The regime is not giving them money. The regime is not doing like what your government and what my prime minister is doing for the people of the country. Dara and Quneitra regions, those are the regions that cross to the Israeli-Syrian border, are poor areas. It was before the revolution. It will continue to be so. They are living in very poverty life. Yes, they are not afraid that they will be bombed, but in the last year and a half, it was hundreds hundreds of assassinations in this area. So I cannot say that even this very simple thing that just the security for your life and your family life is being stabilized. Now, regarding to the corona, well, there is an amazing fact with Arab leaders. Of course, I cannot say all of them, but most of them, they are lying to their people. The Iranian, for example, when the coronavirus spread, they said that, it's 10, 20. There are 10,000s of people dying in Iran from coronavirus, and the regime is saying, no, it's 2,000, but there is 5,000 that become, let's say that they are now in good condition. In Syria, there is 12 cases or 20 cases. This is what the Syrian regime informed. Well, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. We know for sure that Iranian people from the Revolutionary Guard who are serving in Syria, those are the people that are dying corona in Iran. They brought the corona to Syria. Syria took at the siege the area of some of the areas that were involved with Iranian people. And they are just saying that, just 20 people is sick in corona. In the region next to the border, it was 2 deaths that they claimed that is corona. I don't believe it. I can say to you that I think that if the corona will spread in Syria, it will be a disaster, because again, most of the facilities has been destroyed from this war, and I cannot see how the people of Syria are getting treated. Just a week ago, it was published in social media how bad their lives. For example, now they are not open the bakeries because of the corona threat. So people were running all over the street when the truck with the bread was moving. They were hunting this, and there was fighting there and clashes. The situation is very bad, unfortunately.
Thank you. Yes,
Yes,
Luigi. Unmute yourself, Luigi.
Hi. Yesterday, the United Kingdom called for the United Nations to do this campaign of a global ceasefire. Has that? I mean, it's kind of a naive question. Do you think that might have some sort of trickle down during the epidemic of the COVID-19 to all the armed terrorist groups, whether they're in the south of Lebanon or in Gaza, they actually do a ceasefire during all this time? Like, how is the situation in the geopolitics in the border of Israel? So they're still throwing rockets, bombing? Is like, do terrorist groups have stopped? Is the same traffic of weapons, murder? Like, has the COVID-19 caused some sort of slowdown of their activities?
So it's a very good question, Luigi. Let's say that we are now seeing, for example, that the Hezbollah people, which I would just mention that they have 160,000 missiles aimed to the state of Israel, but they are now busy in these days to try to help the Lebanese people to fight against the corona, and they are trying to clean houses and civilian facilities. In Gaza also, Hamas, which brutally controlled Gaza since 27, they have been established a unique hospital for corona people. So they are quite busy in their own, with their own people. But Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, just 4 days ago said that if we will not be able to breathe, 6 million Israelis will not be able to breathe. And Ziad Nakhle, the head of the Islamic Jihad in Gaza, said this same words a day after. So they are collaborating, of course, and threatening the state of Israel that if you will not help us, we will make our terrorist issues. So I don't know, the prime minister of the Palestinian Authority is blaming the state of Israel, blaming Israel's soldiers that we are spreading coronavirus in Judea and Samaria, while soldiers and officers from my unit or my former unit, the COGA, the Coordination of Government Activities in Territories, which Gal also served in, risking their lives to supply medicine against the corona. But again, the Prime Minister of the PA is blaming us because, you can get maybe some points. So again, at this time, yes, we have less terror, but again, it's the Middle East. Sometimes, it's well-known fact that, for example, when Hamas or Hezbollah are in internal pressure, in order to solve this, they are making a clash with the state of Israel. Hopefully it will not happen, because also our soldiers now is doing other things, but the IDF is ready, and the IDF is willing to any challenge. This is what our mission, this is what we are doing in the last 71 years. Unfortunately, we will continue doing this in the next 70 years. So I don't know if the coronavirus will make the stop of this terror attacks or terror organization acting against the state of Israel.
Can I say something?
Yes, I would.
I would just like for people, of course, Israelis who live in Israel.
But I'm so sorry, you're just very static, so it's really hard to...
Oh, no, this is happening again? You can't hear me?
We can hear you, just like there's also like static in the...
Okay, this happens on my Mac, so I'm going to leave the meeting and come back. Is that okay?
Yes, of course. I actually have a question for you, so come back to that.
Sure. Yes, please. It happens on my Mac. I'm so sorry.
Okay. Till Abu is returning to the call, if someone else has any question to Yara or Yara?
Yeah, I have a question for Yara. First of all, thank you all for explaining all of this. So Yara, my question is it's like so inspirational how strong you are in your convictions and your beliefs. So I was just wondering if you could explain a little bit why it's like worth it for you to continue to be such a strong supporter of Israel despite getting backlash from especially your Syrian side. Like, why is it worth it if you're going to get that backlash from them and it can, hurt those relationships? Why is it worth it for you to continue to be so strong in those convictions?
Okay. You know how everyone has a purpose and calling in life? Since I was young, I always had this compassion towards Jews and Judaism and the Hebrew language and Israel. I just never knew why, but it was always embedded in me. And then as the years go by, and while I was in university, I had nothing else to do but to study. And then that's when I started learning Hebrew in 2016, listening to Israeli music, and then getting to know Israelis online, because I was in Malaysia studying university, so I had no opportunity to meet any Israeli or Jew in real life. And then I felt like this was my calling. And at first, my first goal was to meet a Syrian Jew, and it's very, very hard because the Jews that left Syria are very protective, that no one will ever know about them, especially at that time. So when I finally met an Israeli Syrian Jew on Twitter, and I was introduced to this whole community in the Israeli Syrian Jewish community, that's when I felt like, okay, finally God answered my prayers. I finally have some insight on the Syrian Jewish community that are in Israel. Okay, and that's what made me felt like, that was the day I was like, okay, that's it. I'm not gonna stop, and I'm gonna go forward with it. And then now finally, like the place where I was raised in, Dubai, and I was born to hate Israelis and Jews, is finally becoming also the place that is starting to establish societal and social relations, peaceful relations, and to introduce tolerance towards Jews and Israelis. So I feel like all the pieces are coming together to make this happen. this peaceful and tolerant region finally happened. So I feel like I should go forward with it and be one of the people that shift these paradigms, because we're done with all the hate. We're done with all this nonsense that is all about, it's time we stop. So I'm just gonna go forward with it. And then a lot of people are also starting to come out of the closet, of the Zionist closet, and finally also fight in this fight of progressiveness. So that's why.
Thank you, Yara. Abu, thank you for joining us again. You started to say something before your sound became weird and alien. So can you repeat, please?
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you, yes.
Excellent. I'm sorry. This happens on my Mac sometimes. So, of course, those who live in Israel know all about the Middle East and how people who are adversaries are really, really, really hate each other. Let me tell you just how extraordinary what Operation Good Neighbor was in the Middle East. In Syria, if you get shot or wounded and you go to a hospital, the first thing the doctors will ask you isn't where were you shot. The first thing they'll ask you was who shot you. Because if the army shot you, they won't treat you in a Syrian hospital because they don't want to get into trouble. So anybody who ever went to hospital in Syria, you got to lie and say that the terrorists, the opposition shot you. Otherwise, the doctors won't even treat you. The day of the big demonstration, the first big demonstration in my home city of Homs, all the private hospitals shut down all the emergency wards so that none of the patients, if something happened, none of the patients would come to them. This is how extraordinary what Colonel Dror and his team did. For adversaries to help each other in the Middle East, it never happens. And I think that you'll agree with me that it's good for a country to be strong, but the highest expression of the strengths of a country is when you actually treat your adversaries with compassion. So thank you, Colonel Dror. It really is appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Abud. Can I ask you a question, Abud?
Please, by all means.
Can you imagine one day you'll be back in Syria? Can you imagine that day, or you don't think it's going to happen anymore?
It's never going to happen. I'm never going back to Syria. 2011 January, 3 months before the uprising began, was the best months of my life. I had moved back from the Gulf. Actually, Yara, I actually worked in Saudi Arabia and Dubai and Qatar for 8 years, so I'm very familiar with the Gulf. I moved back to Syria. 2011 January, I had bought my own home. I was engaged. My brothers had come from abroad. We were all together for the four of us for the first time in years. I thought January 2011 was the best time of my life. I thought life was going to be great going on forward. Everything looked wonderful. Then the war happened. And when Colonel Dror was showing us images of Syria, I had to look away. I mean, I left Syria in 2013. It's not something that you get over. It's only when I came to Canada I actually had started to process everything that happened there. The Syria that I knew was a beautiful country. Homs was the best city in the Levant. It was better than Beirut, better than Damascus, better than Aleppo. It had all the conveniences of a big city, but with none of the traffic or high prices or any of the headaches that you associate with a big city. Everybody loved Homs. It was the perfect city to live in. And unfortunately, that Syria no longer exists for me. Even if the regime was to fall, even if things were to change in Syria, that country just doesn't exist, and I'll be going back to a country that is now completely unfamiliar with me. So when I was fortunate enough to come to Canada, I made the decision that my past life, I would shut the door on it. I would not try to be Syrian. I would try to, imagine a cup. You have Syrian filled with cup. I would empty the cup and try to fill it with everything Canadian. That's what I thought I was going to do. Well, it's not that easy. Actually, you cannot just forget your past. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. But I'm very grateful to be here in Canada, and just my focus right now is just to be able to establish myself here. And I'm very because unfortunately going back to Syria, it's. I don't believe that will ever happen. I am looking forward to visiting Israel, though. The moment I get a passport, Israel's definitely the country that's on top of my list.
You're always welcome in Israel. Thank you so much. If someone is I want to leave time for last questions, either Eyal, Abud, or Yara, that's the time. And then we want to start wrapping up the webinar. Last question. Okay, we don't have any more questions. I want to thank Eyal again. I'll be very honest with you, I was very, very excited. First of all, seeing my former IDF commander after 10 years, it throws me back to my military service. So I want to thank you again, because for 1 hour I was 18 again, which is very nice when you get to closest to your 30. It's very nice to be 18 again. Thank you so much. It was very, very inspirational. I think that I'm so happy to say that I know you, that I worked with you, and I think that today the students are very, very honored. We're very honored to listen and to take part of this experience and this story. I also want to thank Yara joining us from Dubai, and Abud joining us from Canada. So we have like USA, Canada, Dubai, and Israel on one call. That's incredible. Who thought about it? Who, like, seriously? Yeah, last words.
Yeah, first of all, thank you, Gal, for hosting this meeting. Yeah, you told that you are now came back to 18, so I came back when I was young 30 guy. 2 weeks ago, in 2 weeks I will be 43. So it's nice to remember how was it when I was 30. Thank you, everybody. It was a really pleasure to meet you, Abud and Diara, and all the wonderful students and community. It was a huge privilege. As mentioned before, today my mission, and I'm a reserve officer, is to continue sharing this message, because I think that this is important not just for Jewish people. I most likely to speak not with Jewish crowd, with Christian and Muslim people, because what I've learned from 3 years of helping other people is when people speaking and when there is a dialogue, good things happen. And sometimes we have a very long way to convince people that were educated centuries about things that, well, it's not the reality, it's not the real lives, but this was because of their leaders. They were trained to think something about someone, and I think that the only solution is to start speaking with patient, which those people. And again, it doesn't matter if it's Jewish or Muslim, it's people who learn to hate someone. And when you become familiar with these people, with their minds, with their fears, you discover that maybe the gaps are not so wide. So for me, my mission is to continue speaking. I will be very grateful if you will follow my page, Facebook or Twitter. There is a lot of materials about the good neighbor that I'm sharing in this. And I'm looking forward for the next webinar, guys. So thank you very much. And happy Pesach for everybody. Take care. Thank you very much.